The Napier Family Massacre, uncovering the shocking family secret, true crime documentary, the high-stakes opening. You think you know this story, but you've only heard the lies. Subscribe before the truth disappears. The storm outside rattled the windows, a harsh symphony of thunder and rain, but it was the stillness inside that seemed far more unsettling. The Napier family's home, a small, modest trailer on Stips Hill Road, had been a quiet staple of rural life. It had stood there for years, nestled against the dense woods, where nothing ever seemed to happen. But that night, everything changed. Inside the trailer, the air was thick with a tension that would soon explode into chaos. Police arrived to find an unimaginable scene of horror. 4 bodies lay scattered throughout the trailer, each more gruesome than the last. Roy Napier, a hard-working father with a back broken by years of physical labor, was found collapsed in the living room. His wife, Angie, a loving mother who had recently separated from him, lay in the hallway. Their teenage children, Jacob and Melissa, were also dead, each showing signs of desperate struggles, as if they had fought for their lives in vain. But the most haunting discovery wasn't the bodies. It was the tiny figure that wandered into the road, her feet bare, her face smeared with dirt. Sierra Napier, only 4 years old, was the only one left standing. She had somehow survived the massacre, walking down the quiet country road, confused and alone. She spoke only in hushed tones, repeating a chilling phrase, "Mommy's sleeping." Sierra's innocence stood in stark contrast to the horror she had narrowly escaped. How could a child, so young, walk away from such devastation? What had truly happened in that trailer? How had one family been destroyed in a matter of minutes, leaving nothing but broken bodies and shattered lives behind? As the police began their investigation, they uncovered a mess of contradictions and unanswered questions. No signs of forced entry, no apparent motive. Neighbors reported hearing nothing, and the house seemed undisturbed, save for the violence within. The scene pointed to a personal tragedy, something far darker than a random act of violence. Then, as the investigators combed through the remains of the family's home, something else caught their eye. Beneath the floorboards, hidden away as if someone wanted to keep it from being found, was a torn letter. The paper was yellowed and fragile, half shredded, but the message was clear. It was addressed to Roy Napier, and the sender's name sent a shockwave through the detectives who read it. It wasn't just a letter, it was a confession, and what it revealed would turn the entire case upside down. The discovery of the letter was like a key unlocking something far more sinister. The small town had no idea just how much darkness was hidden in the Napier family's past. Was this massacre the result of a family dispute? A moment of rage that spiraled out of control? Or was there something more to it? The letter suggested a hidden truth, a secret that had been buried for years, locked away in the darkest corners of the family's life. As the rain continued to beat against the windows, the detectives felt the weight of the case pressing down on them. What had truly led to the deaths of 4 people? And why had Sierra, the youngest, been the only one to survive? The truth was beginning to unravel, but it was clear this was just the beginning. The deeper they dug, the more they realized how little they truly understood. What had seemed like an open and shut case was now anything but. The mystery was only beginning to reveal its dark, twisted layers. With the letter now in their hands, the detectives knew they were facing something far beyond a simple act of violence. The Napier family's secret was far more dangerous than they had imagined. And with every new discovery, the case took another turn, leading them closer to a chilling truth no one could have anticipated. When guards checked the cell that morning, the impossible had already happened. The deepening mystery. The truth isn't just hidden, it's buried. And some secrets want to stay that way. The discovery of the letter had left investigators shaken, but it was only the beginning. As detectives turned their attention to the details, they began to realize just how much had been concealed. The letter, though haunting, had only scratched the surface of a much darker mystery. The Napier family's history was far from what it seemed on the surface. The first question on everyone's mind was simple: why? Why had someone killed an entire family, leaving nothing but destruction and blood in their wake? The immediate assumption was that it was a family dispute, a fight that had escalated to a deadly point. After all, the letter had alluded to a serious conflict between Roy Napier and his son, Josh. The restraining order Roy had filed against Josh just days before the massacre made it clear there had been tension, but how did it lead to murder? As the investigation deepened, the pieces of the puzzle didn't fit together as neatly as anyone had hoped. For one, there was no sign of forced entry. The killer or killers hadn't broken into the house. That fact alone suggested that the perpetrator was someone the family knew. The idea of a stranger committing such a brutal act seemed too far-fetched. The lead investigators, Detective Miller and Sergeant Reynolds, began to focus on the family dynamics. They found out that Roy's son, Josh, had been living with his mother, Shirley, not far from the trailer, after an argument had caused him to move out. But what caught their attention were the reports from neighbors and family members who revealed something that didn't quite add up. Roy's relationship with his son Josh had been deteriorating for weeks, but it was Angie, Roy's ex-wife, who seemed to be at the center of the storm. Angie had a new boyfriend, and Jim Bilson, who, according to those close to the family, didn't get along with Roy. The tension between Roy and Jim had been a constant source of friction, and it was said that the two men had frequent heated arguments. Some even claimed that Roy had threatened to take legal action against Jim if he didn't stay away from Angie. With this information in hand, the detectives began to suspect that Jim could have had something to do with the killings. But a breakthrough came when they learned that Jim was miles away with an ironclad alibi. He had been at a barbecue with friends at the time of the massacre. He was ruled out as a suspect, but his name kept coming up, as if there was something more to the story that no one was willing to talk about. While the detectives were piecing together the tangled web of family drama, they received another lead. Roy had been involved in selling prescription pills. In a town like Laurel, where many residents worked hard manual labor jobs, painkillers like OxyContin were a commonly traded commodity. Roy's chronic back pain had left him dependent on these medications, and according to some sources, he had been selling a few of his pills to help make ends meet. Could the massacre have been linked to drugs? Was it a robbery gone wrong, or was there something darker behind the pill trade? The story started to take another twist when a neighbor revealed that Roy had been seen speaking to a man named Henry Smith, a longtime family friend, just days before the massacre. Henry, known as a quiet man who helped Roy with odd jobs around the house, was an unlikely suspect. But when detectives discovered Henry's body outside the trailer, lying face down in the yard, it became clear that he had been involved in some way. His proximity to the crime scene raised more questions than answers. Why had Henry, a man who had been part of the Napier family's life for so long, been killed alongside them? With the discovery of Henry's body, the case took on a more disturbing nature. The idea of a family member or close friend being involved in the deaths seemed more and more plausible. The murder had escalated from a simple family dispute to something far more calculated, something deeper. As the investigation unfolded, there were whispers of betrayal, violence, and a dangerous secret that had been hiding in plain sight. The deeper the detectives dug, the more it seemed like there was someone in the family who knew far more than they were letting on. As the evidence mounted and the emotional stakes grew, the detectives were left with more questions than answers. Who was truly behind this brutal massacre? And, more chillingly, was there someone close to the family who had been pulling the strings all along? When they found the footprints in the grass, they realized the killer hadn't acted alone, and that meant the hunt was far from over. The chilling truth, once uncovered, becomes inescapable, but some truths are too terrifying to face. As the days passed, the investigation into the Napier Family Massacre became a haunting pursuit of a truth that no one wanted to accept. Every lead seemed to twist back on itself, revealing an increasingly complex and disturbing picture. What had started as a straightforward case of family dysfunction had now blossomed into something much darker. The detectives' frustration grew, not because they were failing to uncover the truth, but because the truth seemed to evade them at every turn, slipping further away the closer they got. Detective Miller and Sergeant Reynolds revisited every clue, every piece of evidence, and what they discovered was chilling. Among the scattered belongings inside the trailer, they found a phone that didn't seem to belong to any of the victims. The phone was clean, almost too clean. No blood, no fingerprints, and the SIM card had been removed. It was as if someone had taken extreme care to erase all traces of it. A forensic analysis revealed that the phone belonged to Angie Napier. The meticulousness with which it had been wiped suggested an attempt to destroy evidence. But why? Why would someone go to such lengths to cover their tracks if they weren't involved? As more evidence pointed toward the possibility of a cover-up, the detectives began to piece together the final details. Roy's son, Josh, had always been a suspect, not just because of the restraining order filed against him, but because of his sudden odd behavior after the murders. Josh had been distraught when he learned of the deaths, but something about his emotional reaction felt off. When he was questioned, he seemed genuinely shocked, but was there more behind his reaction than simple grief? The turning point came when they discovered the key piece of the puzzle. Through a combination of witness testimony and forensics, they learned that Josh had been at the trailer that fateful night. Despite his denials, a key piece of physical evidence didn't lie. The same skate shoes Josh had been wearing during the investigation matched the shoe prints found at the crime scene. The detectives had finally connected the dots. Josh had been at the scene, and likely he had been the one to pull the trigger. But the questions didn't stop there. Why had Josh killed his entire family? What was the deeper motive? The investigators dug into Josh's history, hoping to uncover some clue that might explain his brutal actions. What they found shocked them. Josh's anger at his father, Roy, was no secret. The years of arguments, the unresolved tension, the strained father-son relationship, it all made sense in hindsight. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the root cause wasn't just the animosity between Josh and Roy. There was something deeper, something that had been lurking in the shadows of the Napier family for years. It was revealed that Roy had been secretly involved in a dangerous world of illicit drug dealing. His role in selling prescription pills had put him on the radar of violent criminals, and it had also left his family vulnerable to exploitation. Josh had found out about his father's dealings, and the more he learned, the more resentful he became. He felt trapped in a world that wasn't his own, a world where violence and secrecy reigned. But there was more. The final revelation came when Angie's diary was found among the wreckage of the crime scene. Her writing detailed an intense, emotionally charged relationship with someone outside the family, someone Josh had always been suspicious of. That person, it turned out, was Henry Smith. Henry, the man who had been found dead outside the trailer, had been more than just a friend. He had been Angie's lover. The emotional weight of this betrayal and the implications it had for the Napier family were crushing. Josh's world had been shattered by the truth of his father's actions, his mother's affair, and the constant feeling of being betrayed by everyone around him. His rage boiled over, and in the end, it consumed him. As Detective Miller stared at the evidence before him, a feeling of dread settled in. He had uncovered the truth, but the truth felt like a curse. The Napier family's dark secret had been buried for years, and now that it was exposed, it was too late to undo the damage. The investigation was over, but for the town of Laurel and for those who knew the Napiers, the consequences of that truth would last a lifetime. The family was lost, but it was the truth that finally destroyed them. And as for Josh, his confession would haunt the town forever. The story of the Napier Family Massacre, while solved, had no happy ending. In the end, justice was served, but at a cost that could never be undone. The chilling truth was out, and the emotional scars of the massacre would remain forever imprinted on everyone involved. As for Josh, he was left to face a lifetime in prison, knowing that his family's darkest secrets were now a part of his own history, a history that would never be forgotten. They said the truth would set him free, but for Josh Napier, it was the truth that destroyed everything he once knew. If you thought this story was intense, wait until you hear the next shocking case. The truth is never as simple as it seems. If you want to uncover more twisted true crime stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now before the next truth disappears.